and some of the challenges that we see in the environments around us, which you might relate or people around you might relate. So that was a really great experience for me to build a really strong foundation and find strengths of my own and skills, and develop really important leadership skills and soft skills for me to be able to motivate and engage others around me. So that was kind of some of my past. I'm also a mom to 2 boys, 9 and 6, which is the most important job that I do. And just for understanding of where we're coming from, as we built Geenees, my husband and I are co-founders of Geenees, and now we have an amazing team around us that supports this. This came from a very interesting story, personal story. If you want to learn more about that, definitely talk to me or connect with me. But Geenees is basically an opportunity for nonprofits and charities to engage younger generations of donors. And we'll talk about why it's important, which we think you actually know. But why just specifically something that we chose is definitely an opportunity or a way to engage. We're not going to talk about Geenees a lot in the webinar. However, it's just an example of how you can engage within your organizations. There are a lot more other options. But basically, the kind of the quick sentence there is transparency and trust are the leading factors in how you can integrate that within your fundraising models, or not even only for donors, but other ways is definitely up to you. So I'm going to dive right in. So coming from the startup world, especially technology for almost 20 years, I wanted to kind of let you know that I understand some of the struggles and the challenges that you're going through. I was not only on boards, I'm also joining new boards this year. I've also founder of a nonprofit in the past where I was really passionate about creating. And some of these struggles and challenges that you're going through are very similar to the world that we are in as a startup. And just to kind of point out some of the pains that you probably feel in the nonprofit and charity sector is you have to sell the mission. We do that too. You have to sell the mission, the cause that you're in, why you're doing this. And this is kind of with every relationship that you're building, you really need to engage others in understanding why this is important for you and for the society around you. You have to hire on a budget. You usually don't have a lot of operational budget, unrestricted budgets that you have to hire people around you to help you. So what do? You're starting to be really lean, start to be creative ideas. You have to get out of the box and think, what can you do outside of just regular volunteering? But there other ways where you can engage others in supporting you. You constantly secure funding. So I assume that a lot of the people that joined today are fundraising professionals that are looking to engage kind of into the future with younger generations. But securing funding is definitely on top of mind, especially for the leaders of the company and the teams that are around that. You have to do a lot with so little, and that just speaks for itself. You constantly feel like you have to somehow stretch all your dollars in people and talent around you to make sure that they do the most that they can, which can bring burnouts. And I was participating in a really great charity event just the last 3 days, and burnout was one of the topics that the panelists were constantly talking about, especially for employees and staff of the nonprofit world. And then you feel like you have to build for impact and future, although you have to focus on smaller short-term milestones and celebrate them as well. So very kind of, if you feel that you relate to these, that's something that we kind of go through ourselves and went through as we were building that startup from the ground up. So today's agenda is really about why, what, and how. Why younger generations are important for your organizations. And we're actually not talking only about donors. That will be the last focus, just so you can kind of take some of the really valuable things that you can do around donors, because that is the main focus that you probably want to kind of answer today. But not only, younger generations can create a lot more for you, not only as donors. We're going to talk about what are their strengths, characteristics, skills, qualities that that you can leverage, that are specific to that new generations that are coming and appearing in our all around us, and what can they do in order to help you bring your vision forward, and what can you give them in return as well. Eventually talking about how to leverage their power for the success of your nonprofit, and really giving you specific things that you can do around few of the roles that they act within the nonprofit world. Okay, so let's dive in. So just a reminder, what does younger generation mean? And just kind of letting everyone know that all generations are wonderful. We need a balanced board, a balanced team in order to be able to really engage and have a lot of great different perspectives and skills and expertise. So definitely all generations are needed in any environment. So that's kind of the ground point. However, in this specific webinar, we're talking about the millennials and Gen Zs, and how they are a little bit different from previous generations. Every generation is different. I don't really like to put a lot of frames around the ages or how people are, when they're born exactly. However, there are some commonalities and events that are happening within that generation that shapes the way they think, that shapes the way they perceive information, the way that they act, and the way that they communicate between each other, which is very important. So that's what we're focusing on, is really the millennials and Gen Zs. By the way, millennials are also split into the older generations of millennials and younger generations. Older generations of millennials has ended in 89. And for people to know, I'm part of that generation, which is interesting for me also as a learning process. Okay, so why do we need to think about younger generations? And we're not going to dive too much into it, because I think we all heard about it a lot already. So there's a lot of trend in talking about why younger generations are important. There's a lot of research around that. I'm not sure if you have seen the Millennial Report, Impacting Millennial Report, which is really, really important, super kind of interesting. So definitely check it out. But we actually think you know why you need to think about younger generations. And so here's the first question for you, and feel free to answer within the chat. Can you please estimate the average age of your donor pool, What is that average age? And I'm going to give about 10 to 15 seconds for people to respond. And I see 45, 55, I see 25, which is amazing. I'm super interested to know why that estimate happened. Very unusual. And a lot of the 60s and 70s at 45, 55. Great, and thank you so much for all the answers. I love the answer of 35 to 60, which is great. Yeah, so some of you were really close to the average, the country average, the national average. So in Canada, the average age of a donor is 55, and in US is 64. So we're about here, which is understandable. It is expected. Why? Because we know that these generations usually tend to give more money. And when we talk about donors specifically, we're talking about their financial ability to support in major donors especially, and how they're kind of progressing within their life and professional life in order to be able to support charities. But what we want to start doing is understanding why this arrow needs to move a little bit to the right. and continue moving with us, because there's a lot of opportunity there that we're not really leveraging right now. As we continue kind of building that pool, we need to understand that in the next 7 years, not 20, not 30, in the next 7 years, millennials will be outnumbering baby boomers. And millennials and Gen Zs will be the biggest kind of generations of our future, or our near future, short future. And what that means is that they have a lot of power. They have a lot of kind of wealth that is also created for them and will be passed on in the next few years, but also a lot of passion and initiative that they're bringing to it, especially as they understand more about what's happening with the world and a lot of events that are happening around us. So just to summarize, and a lot of webinars are starting with a lot of statistics. We don't want to do that. We're going to touch on the very important ones, but we're going to direct you to resources that you can find out more statistics and research for yourself. We curated some of these resources for you so that you can kind of look at them and see how it fits into your world later on. So we can actually spark some different type of thinking today. But just for understanding, millennials are really very, very generous, and they give more than twice the amount of money in time to charitable causes than baby boomers or Gen X. So definitely check out. These are some of the resources that we curated for you, and you'll see them in the chat right now. So the top two are curated by Geenees. And so we have millennial donor infographic and insights for you, where there are some statistics that are important to know about the millennial donor information specifically that you might want to kind of look for yourself. There's also the 10-step checklist for you to check how you're engaging new generations of donors. And this is just for you to kind of check for yourself, what are the important pieces of information that you need to focus on. And we also want to kind of redirect to our friends at Kila. They had recently an amazing webinar with Najid that talked about the great transfer of wealth around younger generations. And also a really interesting webinar that we found from Free Will around major donors, millennials being major donors. Just a few resources for you to check out, definitely might be helpful for your organization. Okay, next question. So what do you think are the characteristics of your young generations? What are their qualities? And I'm going to give again about 10 to 15 seconds to just put in the chat some of the characteristics specifically about younger generations. Open-minded, innovative, passionate, diverse, tech-savvy, of course, caring, I love that, assertive, energetic, love that, smart, interested, self-motivated, rational, want to make a meaningful difference, quick decision makers, and we can understand why, engaged, hardworking, I love that, powerful, empowered, and continue bringing your kind of thoughts into it just before the next slide. But I love how all these qualities, and I see a lot of them are very, very positive. And you can see how much great skill sets they can bring into the nonprofit world and to environments around them. Not only in the nonprofit world, but in the corporate world. If they can take a lot of that initiative or passion into their environments and impact people around them, that's amazing. So really all the answers that coming from the audience right now are really positive about, and start thinking about what does that mean for you? If these are some of the characteristics that you know about them, why we're not using them, or why would we want more of that, right? Into our environments. So some of the things that we curated from different researchers and of course different conversations around that millennials and Gen Z's audience. They're very diverse, and some of you have mentioned that. Very acknowledging the fact that DEI is an important part of their mission, of how they view the world, their social experience around them. Digital natives, and I like that specific term, less than just tech savvy, because the important part here is that they were born into the environment of digital. That's all they know. This is what's natural for them. If for me, I was not born into the digital world, but it was a transition. I had to learn that as I go. And I'm not sure who's in the audience right now, but I suppose that a lot of you also were able to kind of witness what happened with the digital world before, or the non-existing digital world, and how now this is actually normal for them. So anything outside of digital is what's weird, what's the opposite of what it's supposed to be. So just getting into the mindset of how they view the world. They're very financial minded or frugal. So what that means is they now feel like they have the control of their financials more. They have more available resources and knowledge for them around financials and how to manage their personal finances, as well as tools. I come from the fintech world. Younger generations are really the biggest audience that we work with. Why? Because they don't trust the big banks anymore, and banks are doing a lot to try to change that and to start engaging them in different ways and create digital tools that empower them. But the word empowerment of financially minded young generations and younger generations overall are really important, because now they feel like they have the ability to decide what to do with their financials instead of just listening to an institution. Very entrepreneurial. Why? Because it's so interesting. I talked to in a lot of conversations with students, even really youth, around entrepreneurship and what that means to take an idea, to solve a problem, and to take that into creating something scalable. It's very fascinating to me to hear about all these minds come together and think about, oh, we can change things around us, which is an important part of being an entrepreneur. And their entrepreneurship mindset doesn't take the status quo as it is, but think about what is that around me that I can change, that I feel like I have the power, or I can identify and bring to solutions. So very interesting the way that they're taking initiative and trying to solve issues around them. Sharing and influenced by others. And these are two words that are really powerful here. They're constantly sharing with each other, but they're constantly also being influenced by others. And that's how they build trust. That's how they build trust for brands, to products, to people around them. They constantly share and communicate between each other. They're very proactive. Some of you mentioned taking that initiative and being passionate about what they do, very proactive, but they're also overwhelmed. And I'm not sure how much you heard about it. I believe that there's a lot of resources around young generations being very overwhelmed and need a lot of mental health support and mental well-being. Why? Because they have so much information around them. They're overwhelmed with the amount of information, constant reflections and feedback from the audience, the virtual audience that they have around them. And they need to process and deal with it every single second of their life. And definitely there's a lot of things happening in the environment, or not only digitally, that they need to kind of process and be aware. Of course, COVID made it even worse. So these are some of the things, and thank you so much for touching on some of these things in the chat. Okay, another question. So what do you think are their strengths? And some of the qualities would be very similar to what you said, but what are these strengths that you can actually help you in your environment if you involve younger generations within what you do? What are these strengths that you can leverage within? Good listeners, resilient, I love that. Energy, self-esteem, cooperative, knowledge and flexibility, I love that. New, fresh perspectives, they're really creative. They're keeping informed, vulnerable, collaborative, social media savvy. I know that a lot of organizations using, we have a lot of kind of engaging younger generations, especially for marketing roles and social media, because we know that they know best. Quick listeners, young perspective is so important. Thank you for mentioning that. Good for networking on multi platforms. Yeah, so there's more here. Thank you so much for mentioning that in the chat. So some of the things, I'll just curate some of the things that you also mentioned. Adaptive, resilient, adaptive to the environment, they have to be. And we know that their attention span is going less and less, and for us as well, for all of us, we have to make decisions really quickly. So we're adaptive to our environment, very fast, definitely innovative, because they think about things differently. They think about how can we change things to the better? How can we involve more people into decision making and making things better for everyone as an inclusive community? Communicative, passionate, confident, frugal, as we said, and energetic. Some people said motivated, optimistic as well. Yeah, thank you so much for bringing it up. Okay, so let's dive into how did they can contribute to your nonprofit outside of just being donors, which is important and a very important part. We'll touch on that. But I want to kind of open your perspective into other opportunities that you can engage them within nonprofits in order to create for your own sustainable, dedicated. Thank you so much for someone added dedicated, where you can create a sustainable goal for your organization. So here are some of the things, and there are more, but here are some of the things that kind of we wanted to touch on, where you can involve or leverage or being able to benefit from these strengths that we just talked about. So definitely donors, of course, volunteers, we know that. A lot of the initiative and the passion comes as volunteers. They can also generate new ideas and innovation for you. So if that's hard to change processes, younger generations can bring that different perspective, because new processes seem really easy for them to change. Change is constant. They don't need to adapt to change. Change is less is easier for them than other generations, because they're used to it. They're used to being adaptive. So creating new ideas or innovation and even creating that change is very natural for them. Leaner processes, and by that I mean, because they are financially minded and they're frugal, they don't like waste, and they know that wasteful processes that are inefficient and that really use a lot of unnecessary resources in order to progress something. And for them, this is unnatural again. They want to create things the easiest, the fastest way possible, that also is environmentally minded. So kind of bringing that lens of creating leaner processes, they can really help you do that. They can actually help you bring more funding, and not only as positions as fundraisers, but there's a lot of grants that are meant for youth or younger generations. We leverage some of those too, as when we started as a startup, because some grants will allow you to train, to mentor, to hire youth in different sectors of the audience or the market, to be able to really bring more and more resources into your nonprofit. Advocacy and ambassadorship is huge. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in the webinar, but they can actually bring more and more voices into your nonprofit and more eyes to share with others. So they are really can be the ambassadors into around them to be able to share about your nonprofit. Definitely potential hires as the staff of the nonprofit, and create a trusted brand, which is very important to understand. So especially after COVID happened, brands and the concept of personal brand and professional brand, company brand became even more important. Everything became so much more personal, where people view brands as values. Do they align to their values, to their personal values? Do I want to support that as a brand? So I invite you to think about, how would you consider your organization instead of thinking about it as a nonprofit? What happens if you think about it as a brand, and how you can kind of leverage younger generations to help you create that brand that it's really forward thinking and starts with values forward, that engages similar types of people with similar types of values. So just some things to think about. We'll dive into 4 of these because of time, but definitely talk to us more if you want to learn more. Okay, so just before we move into this, I do want to understand and make sure that everyone understands that we know how hard it is for the nonprofit sector. It's very, very hard to do what you do. And you all are heroes in our eyes. That's why we work with nonprofits. That's why I get up in the morning, because I want to help the nonprofit sector as much as I can with my skill set and my strengths and the team strengths. And so we want to help you do your job. The nonprofit sector is very limited. A lot of restrictions, a lot of time that goes into creating all your processes. So we understand that it's very, very hard for you to make a lot of things happen, even if you want. But with that being said, it is possible. It is possible to move the needle a little bit better, to improve every single day. And that's what we do within Geenees as well. We believe that every step is a step forward. Even if it's small, there's like a really cool image and a picture that I love, with a person trying to kind of climb a ladder with bigger steps or with small steps. And definitely bigger steps is really, really hard to take, but small steps are easy to take, and you constantly feel like you're moving forward. You're proceeding, you're not stuck in one place. And so that's what we invite you to do before we kind of take that next phase in the webinar. But reflecting on all of this, we wanted to give you an opportunity to see things from the perspective of young generations and how they might view the nonprofit world and nonprofit sector. And definitely it's going to be like a high level. There's a lot of amazing nonprofits and charities that are doing a lot for the future and future thinking. There's more and more that are doing that and are able to take these steps forward. But let's see how these generations might view some of the things that are happening, and we've witnessed them too in the nonprofit world. So what are the challenges that are keeping us from engaging younger generations of donors or younger generations overall? So I invite you to wear your Gen Y, which is millennials, or Gen Z glasses on. I think these are the most appropriate glasses that we were able to find for that generation. Okay, so we think that one of the challenges is because resources that are given to them might be viewed as something like this. So some of you might remember that this camera and how was it to operate it. And from a perspective of a millennial or Gen Z, they might look at our resources being like, what is this? What do I do with this? How do I operate this? Why are there only 36 photos here? And why are these the resources that I need to work with? Okay, so you know how interesting was also the process of printing these photos every single time. Fun fact, and let me ask you a fun question. What do you think are the differences between older millennials and younger millennials in a way that they take selfies now? I'm going to give you 10 seconds to answer. What do you think the differences are between older millennials and younger millennials in the way that they take selfies? Okay, great. So camera angles, selfie stick, filters, love that. Older holds phone out instead of using the mirror, interesting. Front camera versus back camera, spontaneous versus planned. Love all these ideas. So I'm an older millennial too. I saw a chat. I'm an older millennial. I don't take selfies. I'm completely with you. I don't take selfies. And if I do, it's horrible. It's not working for me. But the fun fact is that they actually take it horizontally instead of vertically. Why? Because this is what we're used to. We were working with cameras like these were the natural thing for us. And this is why we take it, the older millennials take it horizontally. Apparently, younger millennials and Gen Zs are taking it more vertically because of things like Instagram or filters. And that's more natural now. I didn't know that too. When I found out, it was pretty funny to me to hear. Okay, the next example is tools. These are some of the tools that they see when they come in to work in the nonprofit world or to work with charities. They might see some of these tools that are given to them are a little bit like this. I'm not sure if a lot of the audience know what this is. I'm intrigued to see what people will say in the chat. What is it for? But it's called carbon paper, and it was for copying, tracing paper. Yeah, thank you. It was for copying, and that's what I did for a long time. And when I was a kid, I actually started working when I was 12 with kids, teaching them one-to-one language and math. And I had to do this for every single paper or activity that I did for them. So this was used a lot. This is for copying. And so some of these tools might seem like that. And probably a lot of, when I talk to Gen Zs, they have no idea what that means. The next one is environment. And when I look at this, as we were creating this presentation for you, it made me laugh, because if the environment, when I look at this, my first reaction is it's loud, it's very slow, it's wasteful, because after you print this, you actually need to tear all these two sides, right? And then throw them away. And then, yeah, outdated. Thank you. Someone said outdated as well. And how many trees are killed? Yes, thank you. Exactly. And so this is how they see it, right? It doesn't matter that for me, I'm looking at it and it's kind of nostalgic, right? It's kind of funny to see, and I can relate. I love seeing these photos. It just shows how much progress we made in the last few decades. But it's just amazing to me how reflective, how this might seem to the new generation that was born into the digital world. And lastly, processes. So this picture made me laugh a lot, because what happens if you give a new, let's say a new hire, a Gen Z hire, a process that looks like this? Would they know that this is what you need to do in order to make it better? And how would they see this? How would they just view their impact into what they're doing? So this is kind of, I hope, was a funny way for you to just look at how they might view things. Let me give you some more concrete examples from the world that we actually deal with. So how would a young admin feel, and think about the feel aspect of it, if they need to deposit a check in the bank? So we work with a lot of nonprofits and charities. And as a technology platform, of course, they can sign up on a website, and it's super, super easy, 2 minutes of work. Unfortunately, we have a lot of nonprofits and charities sending checks to us instead, which we, of course, like, we want to support them. We understand completely what they're going through. However, for the people that are working within that nonprofit or charities, it might be very hard, and it might be creating a feeling of, if I was the admin, I would be like, I have no idea what I do with this. Maybe I feel like I don't know something. I feel like I'm not competent enough, or do I really want to work in an environment that this is what I need to do? So just things to reflect on. And sometimes there's no other way, and I completely get that. But focus on the feeling aspect of that younger generations when they need to do a task like that. What would a young donor do with a physical thank you card? So we sometimes get that too. Of course, we make a lot of donations because that's who we are. But we get thank you cards that are sent in mail. And they're physical and they're lovely, and I appreciate them a lot. However, yeah, thank you. Someone said, read it and then recycle it. Throw it away, most likely. It's exactly it. What you guys said in the chat is completely true. They were, unfortunately, yes, recycle it probably, and eventually throw it away. What you want them to do with this thank you card is share it with others. Exactly. So take a photo. So as we were building this presentation, someone said, take a photo and digitalize it. I wish they would do that. I wish they would do that. I want them to do that. However, it's too much work. It's too much work. And we're talking about millennials and Gen Zs that are overwhelmed with information. So taking a photo of that thank you card and then sending it to others and sharing might take too much time. And so I wish they would do that, but unfortunately it's just getting thrown away and not being giving the amount of attention that you spend on sending it. The other kind of two more examples, and then we'll go into the actuals. So what would a young volunteer think about holiday hampers collected in a warehouse with paper lists? And this was one of the reasons why we started Geenees. I had, in my previous position, we had to create, like my chart teams had to create like a volunteering experience for the corporation, 50 people to volunteer in a big holiday hamper campaign with an organization. And unfortunately, they were sitting in a warehouse or standing in a warehouse, a huge warehouse. Again, warehousing costs money. They were standing in a warehouse, 50 people, and trying to create hampers for families at risk. We really, really wanted to help. And then I wanted to interview and ask, how was that experience for all our teams, 50 people? And it's a technology company, right? So usually the generations there are a little bit more tech savvy, and of course, no different ways of doing things. And unfortunately, the response from the volunteers was, I would never do that again. Why? Because they felt that they need to stand in a huge warehouse with a lot of boxes, throwing socks at each other, trying to find the right size. The administration of paper lists was really weird for them. They felt like they were wasting their talent, their strengths, things that they can do. They're wasting their time. They, in their minds, standing there, things could be done better. Like, there's no way that this is how things right now are happening. This is exactly what they said. And it's very unfortunate. This is why we thought about, okay, how can we make that better? Being entrepreneurs ourselves. But this is what they think about it. And you don't want to create an environment where they think about, oh, I'm just wasting my time, or I would not go back and do it, because you want them to come back. You want them to continue volunteering with you. So, and then the last example is, would young donors expect a social sign-up or login option? And so think about your websites. You usually have a donate now button, which is great, which is the first step. And you should definitely do that. However, the expectation now is a little bit further away. And so they expect a membership or some kind of a member login, or at least a social sign up. So Google sign up, Facebook sign up, Apple, anything that they can just click and that's it. And going back to their tax receipts, go back to their history, go back to causes that they support, or even thank you notes and then share with others, redirect you to people that they know. So would they expect a social sign up or login rather than just a donate button? Okay, so things to think about and reflect. It might not be relevant to you, or if you are making these steps forward in some of these, and it was a fun experience for you, I applaud you for taking that first step. Okay, so let's talk about the missing component for the growth of your nonprofit, and which will go into the how exactly. And this would be a little bit faster. So you start with a cause. Every nonprofit, especially nonprofit and charity, we also start with a cause, right? You have an impact behind what you do. You have a mission. And if you have only that, you start with in-person fundraisers, maybe printed mail that is sent to people door to door. You do cold calling, and you really rely on local support and volunteering to be able to grow your nonprofit. So the focus here is how do you grow? So you start with a cause, and then we all know the transformation of technology is needed. We all hear about it, especially in the nonprofit world. We all do our best to really take that forward. So let's see, if you add technology, what happens? So we know that helps, right? So now we have the donate now button, we have our website, we have our webinars. We're starting to do webinars and conversations with people a little bit outside of our local area, different webinars in person or virtual events like galas, fundraisers. And now we have emails for communication. So definitely technology puts ours a little bit forward with that. But we think that there is another missing component that you can really utilize, that is really the hidden power that are coming from the nonprofit, from the young generations around you. And so the last question is, what do you think are their hidden power that is a component that is missing when you think about growth for your nonprofit? And it's one word. So if you can put that one word, network, someone said network, I'm gonna give about 10 seconds. One word, what is that hidden power? Care, I love that. Reach, meaning, excitement, influence, connection, energy, advocates, connection, inspiration, purpose, and focus. I love that. Continue bringing your kind of putting your words up there, transformation, and things like that. So we think that one voice that might relate to a lot of things that you already mentioned, like confidence and influencer sharing, is actually voice, their voice. That's kind of what is missing in our minds when we think about how we can leverage their power, is their voice. And why we think that, and sorry, this is probably the last question for today. I forgot about this one. So how long on average do you think Gen Zs are using their devices in one day? 4 or 5 hours a day, okay? 8 hours, which is crazy. 10, 6, 4, way too much, love that answer. 24, 24, oh my God, I have kids. I have no idea, they will become teenagers. I hope it will not be 24. I don't know what to do with it. If you have ideas, please let me know. But 4, 8, 15. Yes, so you're all kind of right. They spend more than 8 hours a day online. 83, or so, let's start with this. What do they do with their time? 73% of them are actually just texting and chatting. So they're constantly communicating on their devices every day. Thanks for the advice. I will check to chat after. Thanks for the advice for the teenagers years. 83% of Gen Zs trust product information shared by other shoppers rather than they trust advertising. Super interesting concept here, where when I was reading all this research, the reason that they don't trust advertising is they know all of this. They know how YouTube works. They know how advertising works. They know the mechanism behind the scenes. And they're like, I don't want to be fooled by that. I rather trust others telling me what's better. So shared by others is a very important component. And 85% of them, of course, learn about new products from social media rather than just regular advertising. Okay, so what happens if you bring their voice into the mix? We think that that's exactly what helps you grow, because that creates transparency as they're sharing with each other. Transparency, trust, accountability for you, for the organization, but also for them. Efficiency, of course, the ease of use, because then they have the technology, they have their phones, they can do it on mobile, on the go. They're used to creating things really easily. It's very relatable because they have something called influencers. When I was sending my kids to camps this summer, one of the camps was how to become a YouTuber or how to become an influencer. And for me, it was a concept that I just couldn't grasp yet, and I'm learning as well. But that's what they are thinking as a profession, being an influencer, being a YouTuber. So it creates a relatable content to your audience. Social media, of course, reach, short videos that are shareable now. So they're constantly in a second you can share with others and get others engaged in your mission and into your nonprofit. Now you're open to remote and global. Now you can really spread your wings and fly and talk to so many different locations around you. And of course, innovative and new. Okay, so how to leverage their voices for the growth of your nonprofits. And we have a few more minutes. So this is the how to, please remember that. And it's exactly the last portion of the webinar. So we're going to talk about donors, volunteers, advocates and ambassadors, and potential hires. If you have questions about the other pieces, definitely reach out to us. We will help either ourselves or connect you with others that can support you in your mission. Okay, so what do you do with volunteers? And because we don't have a lot of time, I was talking too much. You can take a screenshot of this if that helps you. But quickly, let them be a part of your change. Let them lead change, because that's what they're used to doing and they're open to it. Show the efficiencies that you're doing and be open to creating them. Leverage their network of people that they know, because if they volunteer, they probably believe in you, trust you, and want to be a part of your mission. So they want to talk about you at the same time. Find strengths and mentor and train them for things that you're lacking or they need to learn. So leverage their strengths, each of them individually, of course. Show their impact and results. So for volunteers, they need to know that when they're there, this is the best that they can do with their time. They love your mission. They love your cause. So let me see, as a volunteer, what do I do to make a difference? Because that's important, especially for younger generations. Develop long-term trust as much as you can, because in a few years, they become your major donors. They become your major advocates. For hires, start with volunteers. That's what we did with Geenees, actually. So start with volunteers because they're most engaged. They know about your organization the best and the most things, and they know how you operate and they want to make it better. Hire for potential and motivation rather than just because they have right now, because you can develop skills. So if they have, like I say, the heart to do that, and they understand why your mission is important, that's what you want to. That's what you want to catch, and you want to develop to maybe to different positions, or how you can leverage that within. Create succession planning, because everyone wants to see that their proceeding and continuing to kind of grow into the future. Leverage their skills, like we said, give them responsibilities to make an impact, give them specific projects that they can manage, and involve in decision making. So we know the boards need more diversity in terms of generations. Definitely start involving them in decisions because they have perspectives that are very valuable for you right now and for the future. For advocates, use their follower base. So people that are just talking about you, they're just really happy that you do what you do and they want to support you. They are great to ask for research or opinions. If you do any surveys or research, these are the people that you want to talk to. Create shareable content for them and give them easy links that they can share with others. And then leverage for trusted brand and tone. So here's an example, and that's an important part, and I'll probably show just one. But an example of how we use
While I am not a fan of pumpkin spice latte, I am very excited for sweater weather. With every change of season, especially towards the winter months, which is basically 3/4 of the year in Canada, I look for opportunities to give back to my own community. I recently discovered Geenees, and it has extended my reach across Canada. Let me explain. Geenees is an app that facilitates donations to nonprofit organizations and families in need. It allows donors to make direct impacts to those who need it the most. You can select from which works created by organizations and families, which are all vetted and supported by Geenees. Giving is really as simple as a click of a button, and 100% of the donation will go towards the organization or family of your choosing. This way of giving is direct, transparent, and of course meaningful. Take a look for yourself. Head to my bio at
Okay, so I just wanted to give that as an example to show how we leverage their voice. So you saw how she started with a pumpkin latte. I would not know to start like that, but her audience of 10,000 followers know her and her tone. And so she presented Geenees as transparent, trusted. We did not tell her what to say. And she chose the words that really mattered to her and to her audience. So that's an example of how you can leverage advocates and their voice.
Libby, I'm just going to jump in here quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And we are just coming up on the hour, and we understand that some of the audience may need to leave early, but we will continue the presentation. And just as a reminder, we will be sharing the webinar recording after, so you won't miss the Q&A portion.
Yeah, thank you so much. There's honestly like 3 slides left. If you can stay, definitely please stay. I hope it was valuable for you. If not, please see the recording after. There's really last couple slides left, and I would love to answer any questions that you guys have. Just to give you an example, as we transition to the donor space, is 90% of millennials would stop giving if they distrusted an organization from the Millennial Impact Report. And they're motivated by a compelling mission rather than organizations. They're looking for that transparent, direct impact. And of course, they're using a lot of mobile and online donations, as we know. So the future of philanthropy is really all about that transparency, technology, integrating technology, and democratization of giving. And so for donors specifically, what do you do for donors? You give them smaller, tangible options. It doesn't have to be Geenees. It can be something that relates to you. But anything that will get them in the door, present you with your logo and your brand as a nonprofit, and give them an opportunity to create trust and trust you as an organization, to be transparent with them and to give them an opportunity to impact your specific cause. Build trust longer term. This is what not only communication within emails, but of course be on the same kind of social media that they are, create conversations and relationship more than just a thank you and a transactional ability. Transactional communication. Regular personal communication is kind of what I was referring to. Give easy online experience. So they don't want to spend more than 2 minutes on things, as we all are, to be honest. So definitely easy online experience is what you want to aim for. And share stories of your clients and the impact that you do, your story. We hear a lot about storytelling. They're looking for it. They're talking this way. This is how they share information. They're sharing their story, and they expect you to share the stories as well. Okay, so what's the takeaways? The future of giving is really built on trust and transparency. And it's all our responsibility to create that for all the generations around us, and especially as young generations come in more and more as important parts of our community. The future of your nonprofit relies on the voice of younger generations, because this is the way that we communicate now. This is the way that they teach us to communicate with each other. For better or worse, we need to kind of leverage that to impact causes that are important to us. Last one, you got this. So we think you got this. We are here for you, of course. But the first step is AAA. We call it AAA. So admit that this is needed. Admit that we can change, that you need support, or we all need support within this together. Try to adapt, find these things that are important or relevant for you. It's not relevant for everyone, but what is relevant for you, and adapt to it. And then continue attracting and attract younger generations and start building these relationships. Definitely check out the resources. This is for you. This is for you to download right away from the resources that were shared today to learn more if you like. And that's it. And we're here for you. Okay. Thank you so much. Let's maybe answer how many. I know we're a little bit over time, but how many questions can we answer?
I would say let's just see how many valuable ones Erica has collaborated. So do you have anything set as of yet, Erica?
So I do. I have just a handful of questions. So hopefully maybe we can get to them, or at least pick. There's some overlap for sure. So let's start with this one. How do you suggest that nonprofits overcome all of the hurdles that you talked about today, Libby, like tools and their environment, in order to engage the younger generations as donors or volunteers within the organization?
Great question. And the reason that this question is really interesting is because this is exactly my point of today. They will tell you what is the best solution for you, your supporters, your volunteers, the young generations around you will tell you what is the opposite of having these resources, tools, and processes that they see. What does that mean for you? We can be saying from Geenees, saying, okay, you should do this, you should implement this tool, you should reach out to this. It doesn't matter because it might not be relevant for you and for your organization. So what you really need to do is listen, is just research for your own, engage them on social media and say, we are collecting a focus group of millennials and Gen Zs, maybe 10 people, 20 people, help us understand what replaces this for us. You love our cause, you're advocates, you're supporters, you want to support immigrants like me. Help us support them better. What would you do in a best environment? Can you imagine how much motivation, inspiration, and spark you can create within a focus group like that? How would they view you now in a completely different light? They now see you as future thinking, an amazing promoter of the cause, for a person, a nonprofit that wants to take things into the future and sees a huge vision and wants to involve the right people. So that would be my best recommendation, is get them in the room with you and ask those questions that are relevant for you.
Excellent. Okay, so the next question, and I think that this one is really interesting. So someone shared that their impression is that going after younger generations for giving will bring in much smaller donations, and that will take additional resources within their team to manage. So one, is that true? Or if that's true, is it worth it to move forward with engaging that younger base and still receiving those smaller donations?
Good question. Very good question. And the reason that is a good question is because we need to think a little bit bigger. I'm not saying plan into the future, because I understand as a startup, you have to focus on your lean resources that you have right now and the things that you can do right now in order to move the needle a little bit. So I completely get that question. However, what we're forgetting is budgets and salaries are completely different right now, especially with technology companies starting to bump salaries for that younger generations that are expecting now more for their work, and other companies starting to compare the same and beat each other in terms of salary compensations. What that means is that they can now afford more than what you expect them to afford. So maybe it's a small donation right now, but that small donation is not what they can afford. It's their opportunity to test you and to test, do they trust you? Did they receive the experience that they want? But then don't forget that even if it's a $20 donation, doesn't matter. Now, if they receive the experience that they want as small donors, they're now talking to their employees and saying, ooh, I found us this amazing nonprofit for our DEI and culture. Hey, company, let's support this nonprofit, this new nonprofit that I found. So now you are able to engage a company, a corporation for your to support your nonprofit through that small donation. So it's less about the amount of donation. I'm not saying don't focus on cash fundraising, proper things that you do for other generations, as well as events that are working for you. You should continue doing that 100%. Whatever works for you that brings funding, you should continue doing. I'm saying if some of them really be critical about what works, what doesn't work, what brings most return on investment for you. But some of them might be allocated differently because the impact of them is really hidden. You cannot really see what the impact of that one donation can do for you. And so that's what I mean by voice. They can voice out what they feel about you in a completely different way to their environment that they're used to, right? So that's a thought. I hope that helps.
Excellent. So I have one last question, and I feel like this is a great place for us to end because I imagine that it's something that many organizations face. So how do you help trying to get some nonprofits who are stuck in their ways to shift their mindset and become open to the idea of younger donors and younger volunteers?
Mm-hmm. And I suppose it's a question from one of the staff of maybe leadership that they find that it's hard to engage or hard to change some of the processes within. So it sounds to me like an internal question within, how do I change it within my nonprofit? And even if it's not, honestly, especially for other generations or other ways of doing, a lot of it comes to stats, data, proof that you need to be an advocate for. So the person that asked the question or others like that, it's your job to bring forward that information into the decision makers and say, this is what's happening. This is how it works for others. Let me give you examples. And this is why it's not working for us. What can we do better? And don't expect a change like in a second. It's hard. It's hard for us. I'm still taking horizontal selfies if I do, because it's hard for us to change our thinking and to and completely like be, oh, everything that I knew before is completely wrong. Now I need to adjust. So it's hard. It's hard for all of us. However, even if it's a small adjustment with one program, with one thing that they do, it's a step forward that will eventually bring that aha moment for them and said, you know what, we need to start doing things differently. So start with small, give proof, examples, in things that worked for others that can be better. Because honestly, staying the way that we are is really being behind, is really staying behind, because a lot of them want to move forward. Every nonprofit that I'm talking to wants to do things differently. They have a lot of limitations around them. And so how to break through that is every nonprofit is individual to individually support that is needed, but eventually everyone wants to do their best. So take a step back, think about what would impact the most to your organization, what would be the most important, give some examples and proof of what things that are working, and show how that could be the changing point for your nonprofit. I hope that helps. If you have more questions, I would love to connect with you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Libby and Erica, for such a great presentation. Did you have any final comments before we sign off today?
I would just say that, like we said, you got this. Like, we're here for you, us, but also a lot of other resources and tools and friends in our support system. We can shower it all for you and on you. So let us know how we can support. But you got this. We know how change is hard, but we love you for the work that you do. You're all honestly heroes in our eyes. So continue doing your best job.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I just wanted to remind everyone that you will all receive a follow-up email later today with a link to the webinar recording. And please feel free to share this link with your colleagues. The email will also include a survey link that you can fill out with your feedback on today's webinar. And on behalf of Charity Village, thank you so much for joining us today. And I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Take care. Bye.